The morning air crackled with tension as television cameras focused on the familiar studio set. The hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Off camera, producers whispered about an unexpected development. Will Smith had just stormed off the Good Morning America stage after a blistering exchange. The audience sat frozen, mouths agape. Inside the charged moment, a confrontation brewed between Smith and guest Trevor Noah, escalating faster than anyone anticipated. What had started as a standard interview turned into an awkward, heated standoff. The mood shifted from routine to drama in seconds. Viewers watching from home sensed something had gone terribly wrong. This was no ordinary talk show segment, and nobody was fully prepared. The anchors, caught between professionalism and shock, tried to maintain composure even as the atmosphere crackled. Moments earlier, Trevor Noah had posed a question that struck deeper than intended. In discussing recent controversies surrounding Smith, Noah framed the matter with sharp sincerity, asking how the actor reconciled public criticism with personal growth. Smith responded with a partial smile, but his voice betrayed tension. He answered carefully, deflecting some lines with gentle humor, then pivoting to serious reflection. But the next question, probing the boundaries of Smith's public remorse, seemed to hit a raw nerve. The tension between honesty and defensiveness escalated. Noah, noting that many believed Smith's public apology lacked full accountability, pushed further. The tone shifted from interview to interrogation, and Smith bristled. The exchange, once measured, began to crack. As Smith spoke, his words grew sharper. He challenged the notion that a flawed moment defined his entire life. He reminded Noah and viewers that personal struggle is complex, and that redemption cannot always be neatly scripted. But Noah persisted. If one acts out in anger, how can the public truly believe the mea culpa? Smith frowned, gathered composure, then launched into a reaffirmation of his humanity. He insisted he had owned his mistakes, sought forgiveness, and was striving to do better. But the tension lingered. The lines between interviewer and subject blurred out. The debate felt mutual. Their voices rose, not in anger but in intensity. The exchange felt electric, charged by two strong minds colliding on emotional terrain. The hosts watched closely, sensing the show was spiraling. Off to the side, stagehands and producers exchanged rapid glances. Should they intervene? Should the cameras pivot away? As Smith pushed back, citing personal history, public pressure, and the burden of expectation, Noah accounted with journalistic rigor. Accountability must include action, not just sentiment. The balance shifted between empathy and critique. Viewers at home leaned in. In the studio, the tension laced the air. Each mention of past mistakes, of redemption, of public judgment, added combustible weight. In that moment, something had to give. Then it happened. Smith stood abruptly. The chair scraped. Noah paused mid-question. The live audience gasped. The hosts froze. In one swift motion, Smith declared he would no longer continue under those terms, and turned to leave. The air crackled with shock, and no one had expected the escalation to lead here. In the hush that followed, camera operators hesitated, crew scrambled. Smith left the frame, leaving an empty chair and stunned silence. Noah remained seated, mask of surprise and hurt flickering across his face. The show devolved from structured dialogue into chaotic aftermath. Backstage, producers scrambled to regain control. They signaled the hosts to cut to commercial, but an uneasy energy lingered. The monitors still flickered with Smith's departing figure, frozen in mid-turn. The hosts exhaled, trying to find their voices, trying to steady the tone. What should they say? Should they comment? The network's reputation hung in the balance. The crew worked in urgent whispers. Was this a breakdown, a public relations nightmare, or a brave act of integrity? The show had crossed from journalism into spectacle. Viewers switched channels, waiting for updates. The host's voice, steady but shaken, offered a brief apology to viewers for the interruption, promising clarity after the break. In the hours that followed, social media exploded. Clips of Smith's exit, Noah's stunned expression, and audience reaction circulated. The hashtag #MacConfrontation trended internationally. Pundits dissected body language, motives, and missed cues. Fans of Smith defended the move as a matter of boundary and dignity. Critics said he'd walked away from accountability. Others argued Noah had crossed into rhetorical accusation. The media savored every frame, the moment Smith turned, the tension in Noah's eyes, the dead air that followed. Memes sprang up. Analysts compared it to other celebrity dialogues gone wrong. The public watched the fallout with morbid fascination. By midday, statements began to drip. The network released a brief note expressing regret over the abrupt end and promising a full explanation. Smith's representatives remained silent at first, then released a statement citing irreconcilable differences in tone and respect. Noah, in turn, tweeted a composed message. "My goal was honest dialogue, not confrontation. I regret the escalation but stand by the need for accountability." Opinions split. Some viewers expressed disappointment in Smith's exit. Others praised his decision to walk away from pressure. What was once a talk show segment had become a cultural flashpoint, raising questions about celebrity, accountability, and the limits of public apology. As the hours unwound, insiders leaked glimpses. Producers admitted they had warned both sides early not to push too hard. They'd hoped for a civil exchange, not fireworks. But they underestimated the depth of emotion on both ends. A staffer claimed Smith had grown visibly restless earlier in the interview, shifting in his seat, voice tightening. Another claimed Noah had sensed the tension rising and intentionally leaned in, feeling bound by journalistic duty. The clash, then, was not entirely unpredictable. Two powerful voices, in a charged domain, tested the edge lines between empathy and challenge. A moment of collision was perhaps inevitable. That evening, talk shows replayed the confrontation clip over and over. Hosts debated, was Smith justified or petulant? Was Noah cross-examiner or curator of truth? Celebrity reporters raced to get written statements. PR teams strategized messaging. The cultural conversation broadened. When does a celebrity get space to defend? And when must they endure relentless questioning? Was Smith's exit a move of strength or surrender? Was Noah doing his job or overstepping? The audience, as ever, projected its own moral lens. For every defender of Smith, there was a critic demanding more humility. For every defender of Noah, there was one warning of excessive pressure. Over the next days, more context emerged. Friends of Smith said he felt ambushed, emotionally triggered by questions tied to deep wounds. They claimed his public apology tour had been scrutinized unfairly. Allies said he sought a space for healing, not interrogation. Meanwhile, media insiders confirmed Noah's intention was never to provoke but to press for clarity. Interviewers argued that public figures must face tough questions. The narrative coalesced. Two men, wounded but determined, collided at the intersection of vulnerability and power. The public watched a meltdown that revealed how fragile, yet combustible, public redemption can be. In follow-up appearances, both Smith and Noah addressed the incident carefully. Smith in controlled settings reaffirmed regret for slipping away, yet maintained he would no longer engage under attack. He still insisted on accountability, but demanded fair tone. Noah, in interviews, apologized that the show ended abruptly, expressed sympathy for Smith's pain, but said his line of questioning was sincere, not malicious. Media reviews judged both statements, Smith's restraint, Noah's diplomacy, the tone of the apologies. Some saw growth, others saw evasion. The public, again, was split. Cultural commentators used the confrontation as a lens. What does society demand of public figures? How much forgiveness is owed? How much responsibility must celebrities bear? They debated whether Smith's exit set a precedent of silence under pressure or reasserted dignity in the face of accusation. They asked whether Noah's probing tactics reflected journalistic courage or aggression. Podcasts and panels argued, empathy is essential, but not at the cost of truth. Others warned that celebrity culture tends to demand perpetual contrition. The confrontation became more than a moment, it became a mirror. Months later, the memory lingered. The clip still surfaced when conversations of accountability arose. New interviews referenced it. Smith's future talk show appearances were scrutinized. Would he walk if pushed? Media hosts tread carefully. Noah, too, adjusted his style, more measured, more empathetic, more aware of audience backlash. Their collision had left marks on both their reputations. It forced talk shows, networks, and viewers to reconsider boundaries of confrontation. It sparked a renewed debate about how we expect public figures to atone. The day's fallout reshaped interview culture even as both men strove to move forward. In the final analysis, the confrontation on Good Morning America between Will Smith and Trevor Noah stands as a striking example of how fame, regret, vulnerability, and inquiry intersect. It reveals the dangerous edges of public life, when forgiveness meets skepticism, when human frailty collides with reputational stakes. The abrupt exit, the tense exchange, the mass reaction, all these reflect a society fascinated by redemption yet unforgiving of missteps. In that charged moment, the walls between subject and interrogator blurred. The broadcast became a battleground of truth and emotion. And though the show ended prematurely, its ripple continues, reminding us that real dialogue demands both courage and care, and that walking away can sometimes be as loud a statement as staying to fight. In the days after the clash, every entertainment outlet tried to spin the story in its own way. Some tabloids painted Smith as volatile and thin-skinned, while others highlighted his humanity and the years of public pressure he had endured. Talk radio callers debated fiercely, some sympathizing with his exhaustion, others dismissing his reaction as unprofessional. Every snippet of footage was slowed down and analyzed. The tightening of his jaw, The pause before his exit, the glimmer of frustration in Noah's eyes. Everyone wanted to be an expert in that moment, forgetting that behind every viral clip were real people still processing emotions, trying to make sense of what had just unfolded. Producers from Good Morning America were forced into immediate crisis meetings. The network executives demanded explanations. Why had the tone spiraled out of control, and how had they lost command of a live broadcast? Behind the scenes, emails flew back and forth between publicists, talent coordinators, and legal advisors. Some feared that Smith might pursue claims of misconduct, while others simply wanted to mend the professional bridge. The show's reputation had taken a hit, but producers knew controversy also meant ratings. Quietly, they weighed whether the fallout could be turned into a moment of renewal or if it risked tarnishing their credibility entirely. Meanwhile, Smith retreated from public view for several days. Friends described him as introspective, spending time away from the spotlight, focusing on family and reflection. Those close to him said he felt frustrated not just by the confrontation but by how it was portrayed. He believed his intentions had been misunderstood, that he wanted dialogue, not conflict. Yet he also admitted privately that his emotions had run high. The actor, long known for his poise, now found himself grappling with how to balance authenticity with composure. The weight of public judgment was heavy, and silence became both his refuge and his punishment. Trevor Noah, on the other hand, handled the aftermath with composed professionalism. On his own platform, he acknowledged the uncomfortable nature of the exchange without delving into private details. He stressed the importance of empathy and conversation, saying that even difficult moments can lead to understanding. His tone was calm, almost philosophical, a contrast to the fiery tension that had consumed the studio. Some admired his restraint, while others accused him of deflecting responsibility. Regardless, his reputation as an interviewer who did not shy away from discomfort only grew. He became the calm eye in the storm, while Smith remained its emotional center. In fan communities online, debates turned personal. Supporters of Smith accused media outlets of baiting him, arguing that the entertainment world thrived on celebrity pain. They created hashtags like #RespectWill and #LetHimHeal, demanding compassion. Others countered with #accountability matters, emphasizing that fame brings responsibility. Comment sections became miniature battlegrounds where empathy and judgment collided. Psychologists and influencers joined the fray, dissecting the psychology of public humiliation and forgiveness. The moment had evolved into a cultural study and no longer just about one man's reaction, but about the collective thirst for drama disguised as accountability. As journalists revisited the incident, they noted a striking irony. Both men were advocates for emotional intelligence and open dialogue. Yet, in that brief television encounter, both became symbols of miscommunication. Smith's vulnerability clashed with Noah's objectivity, and the result was an explosion of misunderstanding. Some writers compared it to the ancient art of public trial, where figures of influence are judged not by law but by perception. In this digital age, every facial expression becomes evidence, every silence a confession. The Good Morning America incident underscored how fragile authenticity becomes when filtered through millions of watching eyes. The following week, executives invited both Smith and Noah to private mediation, hoping to mend fences and preserve professional relationships. According to insiders, the meeting was civil but tense. Both men agreed that emotions had overrun reason. Smith reportedly offered an apology for walking out so abruptly, while Noah expressed regret for how his questioning had been perceived. Yet even in reconciliation, there was caution, a recognition that their words would always be replayed, scrutinized, and remembered. They shook hands, not as rivals, but as two men trying to move past a moment that neither fully controlled. Entertainment reporters later speculated that the mediation might lead to a joint appearance aimed at closure. Networks floated the idea of a follow-up conversation, one built on empathy and understanding rather than confrontation. But Smith declined, saying that healing did not need to be televised. His statement resonated with many who felt that modern culture often demands public repentance for personal growth. Noah, meanwhile, said he respected the choice and wished Smith well. Their interaction, once defined by tension, now carried a quiet dignity. Both men seemed determined not to let the moment define them forever. Even so, the media's obsession did not fade easily. Late-night comedians made jokes, social commentators wrote think pieces, and publicists fielded endless calls. The incident had become shorthand for celebrity vulnerability under pressure. Some even turned it into motivational fodder. Don't let your emotions walk you off your own stage, one viral quote read. The narrative twisted, reframed, and multiplied until the original truth was buried beneath layers of commentary. What had begun as a personal misunderstanding had evolved into a parable for fame, forgiveness, and the costs of authenticity in a performative world. In classrooms and media ethics panels, The confrontation became a case study. Professors asked students to analyze who bore responsibility: the interviewer, the network, or the guest. Was emotional honesty compatible with live television? Could the pursuit of truth coexist with compassion? Students debated fiercely, realizing how the boundaries between journalism and entertainment had blurred. Some concluded that both men were victims of a system that feeds on vulnerability. Others argued that control A, not chaos A, is the duty of any professional in the spotlight. The lesson extended far beyond Hollywood. It touched the core of how modern society communicates. Over time, Smith began to re-emerge publicly, appearing at charity events and film premieres. He spoke sparingly about the incident but often emphasized themes of resilience and growth. When asked about lessons learned, he replied that not every disagreement needs to become a spectacle. He described the experience as humbling, a reminder that even those with the best intentions can falter. His honesty softened public opinion, and slowly, the narrative began to shift. Audiences saw a man rebuilding his equilibrium, still passionate, still imperfect, but wiser for the turmoil he had endured on that unforgettable morning. Noah continued to thrive as a commentator and storyteller, using his platforms to explore the complexities of fame, grace, and confrontation. He often spoke about how conversation requires both courage and patience. When asked indirectly about the Smith episode, he said only that every human interaction teaches something valuable. His career did not suffer, if anything, it grew stronger. The ordeal seemed to underline his image as thoughtful and composed under fire. Where others saw controversy, he found an opportunity to reflect on communication itself. He, too, had been changed, though quietly and without fanfare. Eventually, both men found themselves at the same charity gala months later. Cameras caught them exchanging polite smiles, shaking hands, and sharing a few words. The crowd cheered softly, a symbolic gesture of peace. Though brief, that image traveled widely online, captioned with messages of maturity and reconciliation. It was a moment that reminded fans that conflict can yield understanding, that mistakes can be mended with time. The photograph became the full-circle closure that audiences had longed for. Without speaking publicly, both men communicated something more powerful than any interview could capture. As time moved forward, the world found new controversies, new stories, new moments to debate. Yet the Good Morning America clash lingered as a marker in pop culture memory, not for scandal, but for the conversation it sparked. It reminded viewers that even icons can stumble, and that live television magnifies every imperfection. The confrontation became a quiet cautionary tale about empathy, restraint, and the human heart under pressure. It lingered because it felt real, unfiltered, and raw, a rare moment when fame stripped away its own armor and exposed the trembling truth beneath. In retrospect, the event stands as a defining moment for both Will Smith and Trevor Noah, not because of anger, but because of what followed: introspection, dialogue, and ultimately, understanding. It became a reminder that growth often begins in discomfort, that reconciliation can follow rupture. Their story reflects a wider truth, that in a world obsessed with judgment, true strength lies in humility and healing. Though the cameras have long stopped trolling, the lesson endures. Conversations, even the messy ones, shape who we become. And sometimes, walking away is not an ending, but the first step toward peace.